Hi, welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me. Correct me if I'm wrong. The people online can definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hello, hello. Just checking the sound. Okay, thank you. Well, a big welcome from my side to everyone there in the room and obviously to the other folks online uh, with our virtual presences. I am indeed in Mexico City physically, I guess, and mentally in a way, even though, I wish I could be there with you in person as well. And it's 3 a.m. here, so that's the perfect time for contemplation. It's finally quiet. Mexico is celebrating the Easter week, so a lot of people have left the city and a lot of visitors have arrived. And it just feels like we were all on a tiny break from our routines where we can find a little bit of contemplation, yes, in general, and also loving kindness in particular. And in that's kind of on a personal note. In auspicious turn of events, through my own stupidity, I accidentally double booked myself for this weekend. So I've been teaching an in-person retreat or facilitating an in-person retreat on kindness for oneself here in Mexico City. And we're also doing this, I guess, with me being virtually present. So I'll spend 6 hours with the folks in Jamyang and then have my breakfast and go spend some more hours here at the in-person event. But all of that is to say, I'm so deeply grateful for this opportunity to dive deeply into these practices with you, with the community, which is, I think, is a huge blessings of these annual retreats that Jamyang has been having. They are short in duration, obviously just one day, but they allow us still to kind of recharge our battery a little bit with these practices, or maybe to touch upon these practices for the first time if we have not yet played with them. And these practices are indeed very ancient. They go all the way back to the historical Buddha himself, so at least 2,600 years. That's quite a considerable amount of time in terms of a lineage being unbroken. So there's that. There's this historical lineage related to this practice. There's an opportunity to play with it and see whether it fits into our life. And there's also the community aspect, which again, I think is just so beautiful. We are partly online and some of us are there in person, obviously, big hello. And this just reminds us that there are more people interested in contemplation. There are more queer practitioners interested in contemplation, and not just contemplation in general. Quite a few of us are interested in the Buddhist tradition, in particular, with everything that it has to offer to us as individuals, to us as a community, and then to the world in general. So, the purpose of this day is to come together, to practice, to play with the different meditations, to see whether they work for us, to find maybe one that resonates with us. And that's all very important. But the other part is the community aspect. And so Jasmine and I have been talking about how can we make it truly beneficial in that regard. And that's where some of the little group exercises, little group discussions, I should say, would come from. So, especially if you're there in person, it will be an opportunity to turn to each other at some points and very briefly reflect on your experiences. And there will be a period of focused discussion, quite short, comparatively speaking, but hopefully leading to just this natural opening of the heart, in which through listening to other people sharing, being empathetically present for them, we see that there are a lot of other hearts out there that share the same wish for happiness and the same wish for freedom. So that's sort of the general idea for why we are alternating, yes, meditations with these little moments of sharing. And of course, you're very welcome to also share in the breaks and during lunchtime. All of this is just to create this warm-hearted feeling of commonality, of heart-based closeness. And then on a more technical note, we are also, from my side, recording this. I'm recording myself, meaning I'm not recording anything that's happening on Zoom or in the room, but that is just to make these meditations available later. So I'll upload them to YouTube and share the link with Jasmine, and also cut out the audio meditations. So if a particular practice resonates with you, you will have access to all of them. So there will be no need to search extensively. And then based on that specific practice, you can explore the whole family of practices related to that. So if you resonate deeply with a particular style of loving kindness, it will be available to you, and then you can just dive more deeply into that. And kind of on the final note before we start meditating, we are quote unquote in a retreat. And now that's, of course, a very big term that has many connotations and can entail very different things depending on the specific community that we're dealing with. And in the Tibetan tradition in particular, the idea of being formally in retreat means that there's some sort of container around us. So in Tibetan, quite literally, to be in retreat, samla depa, is translated as to be in a boundary, within a boundary. So oftentimes when people do retreats, especially solitary retreats, they're, let's say, in a cave, separate from the rest of society, temporarily pulling themselves away from the distractions to work on their mind, to perform this type of alchemical process. But in the modern day and age, we are also talking about retreats with regards to events like this, where the container is not particularly strong in that, you can step away at any point, or you might check your phone if you wish to, if you really need to, throughout the day, because of course we have obligations and so forth. So from that point of view, we're definitely not within a boundary, as in within a solitary practice room in a monastery. We're not in a cave, etc. But at least as a way to move in the direction of this sort of alchemical container experience, we can, if we wish, allow ourselves to temporarily withdraw the threads of our attention from everything that has to do with the news agenda, from everything that has to do with social media, from everything that has to do with our work, really, even. And maybe even some of our concerns with regards to our family, friends, and so forth. Not to fully divest ourselves from all of that permanently, not at all. We are working on loving kindness in order to then share it with others. But just to give ourselves this break that we probably truly deserve, because it's through taking these breaks, through entering the zones of deep rest and mental training, that we can then be of greater service to others. Potentially, if we wish to, once again. So just to allow ourselves to say, oh yes, just for these maybe 6 hours or so, I'm here with a community of like-minded people. I'm here with my own practice. I'm here in the retreat hut of my own body, as one great Tibetan master described it. And this is where I can perform this wonderful work that has to do with the cultivation of loving kindness within my own mind. And with regards to this term work, I also note, sort of as an additional note, when I work with some groups and some communities, there's obviously some hesitation on occasion with regards to seeing meditation as training, which it is. Meditation is a type of training in which we cultivate the positive qualities and patterns and habits of our own mind. Famously, the Tibetan tradition defines meditation as gom, which is a verbal root that means to familiarize or to habituate. So it's this process of familiarizing our mind with positive skills, qualities, states, patterns of thinking, and so forth. So from that point of view, it is training, and it is not unlike any sort of physical training. In fact, there is this basic hypothesis in the Tibetan tradition that people who train very extensively, like Olympic athletes, gain extensive accomplishments, and that is something definitely to potentially aspire for. But because we live in sort of a burnout society, because we are under a lot of pressure, many of us are at least, with regards to our work, social obligations, and so forth, sometimes talking of meditation as training can be a little bit jarring. It's like, oh, just one more thing on my plate. Why did I sign up for this retreat? Goodness, I thought I was going to be chill, just take a nice weekend off. And here I am, ready to train my mind. Well, from that point of view, it is also true that meditation is sort of a spa procedure. It is a way of accessing deeper levels of rest, deeper levels of ease. And yes, through that we are training in something, but we're also allowing ourselves to rest deeply. And there's some wonderful research on that coming out from some research groups in California, where they talk about the so-called blue mind, accessible to us through these profound practices of rest and relaxation. The blue mind as the zone in which our body and mind start to rejuvenate themselves, to regenerate on a cellular level, amongst other things. So there's some wonderful science related to that, but the practices themselves are still coming from the great contemplative traditions, including Buddhism. And that is what we're here to play with. So just in the spirit of play, just in the spirit of sharing space of good vibes, I guess, with the community of fellow-minded people, we're going to slowly start jumping into our practices. And again, if you wish to see them as mental training, perfect. If you wish to see them as a spa procedure, also perfect. Please feel free to stretch at any point, to move around, to change your physical position. I will be giving these short reminders with regards to stretching before every practice, so that your body doesn't get too stiff, so that your knees don't get too tired, just because we really want to be recharged by this day, not get more exhausted. And we're going to start with a practice that is sort of just a general preliminary to anything we will do today. And this practice is oftentimes just used as the preliminary step to any particular meditation done in the Tibetan tradition. Just the first 3 or 4 minutes of any given practice are often spent on doing what we're now going to do in a more elaborate format. Basically, relaxation and establishing vast positive aspirations for what we're about to undertake. In this case, we'll do it as a more elaborate practice, just to really feel it deeply first. But in the following meditations, we're always going to do just a couple of minutes of that before jumping into our main method. And so to do this practice, if you wish to do it, obviously, please feel free to stretch a little bit to make sure your position is comfortable, make sure your knees are okay. Again, I can't see the back of the room, but there are probably chairs that you can switch to when your knees feel the need to. So, just taking it really, really easy. Yeah, just being very kind and gentle with ourselves. That's always a good approach. And when we're ready, adopting a comfortable stationary position. For many of us, it would probably the upright position. So we're sitting up somehow with our legs crossed or with our feet flat on the ground if we're on a chair. But maybe, especially if you're practicing from home, you at some point would decide to practice in the supine position, adopting in particular the position that's known as Shavasana, or the corpse position in Indian yoga. So that's also an option. So please feel free to use that when you feel the need to. And once we have adopted this comfortable position and played with it a little bit, maybe gently elongating the spine if that feels right, maybe dropping and relaxing the shoulders, making sure our chin is leveled with the floor and then slightly tucked in. With all of that, we can start bringing our awareness to the body, to the experiences of the body in the present moment. Noticing in particular the contact between our body and the ground that's holding us. The firmness, the stability, the strength of the surface that is supporting us. And of the big planet underneath us itself. This vast field of the 5 elements supporting us right now. And then feeling all of that support, all of that stability underneath us, inviting some of the same qualities into the space of our body and allowing them to manifest as a wave of relaxation, gradually moving through us. First, entering our feet and toes and helping us release the muscle tension there. And then expanding itself to encompass, to embrace our legs, where once again we release the tension. The area of our pelvic floor and buttocks. Then the abdomen and the lower back. And the entire space of our torso. Our shoulders, upper arms, forearms, hands, fingers. And then our shoulders once again. Eventually arriving to the area of our neck and throat. Exploring the back of our head. Our crown. And our facial muscles. Allowing this wave of relaxation to soften the muscles in our face, to wash away the tension throughout our body. And to bring us an experience of stability and strength, inseparable from relaxation. So, for a few moments, we can just experience this stillness of the body. We can be still and be aware of the stillness. Allowing our breath to move naturally without trying to control it in any way. Allowing our speech to rest in a state of silence. And on the level of our mind, being present with what's happening in our body right now. The union of stillness and movement when that movement occurs. For example, through the process of breathing. And then with our body resting in this manner, with our mind already being somewhat more relaxed and somewhat more present, we can very gently explore our motivation for our contemplative practice in general, and maybe also our aspirations for being here now. What is it that brought me here, and what would I like to eventually realize? What are my most daring spiritual or psychological aspirations? Obviously, there's no wrong answer here. Whatever is meaningful to us is meaningful to us. But we can also sometimes play with that motivation a little bit by making sure it has aspects of profundity and width or vastness. Where for profundity we can aspire for deeper, more sustainable types of well-being. And for vastness, we can wish to accomplish the benefit of many, or even the benefit of all beings. Wishing perhaps that every practice that we do on our own and together could bring genuine benefit and true, profound well-being to all who live. And so holding our aspirations in mind, and for a little while maybe even breathing life into them with each natural exhalation, as if strengthening our passion to eventually accomplish these goals. When all the causes and conditions come together and bring the result. And then when we're ready, we can release all of these aspirations, wishes, maybe the associated images, simply resting in the present moment for a few seconds. And then coming back to our body, grounding ourselves in the sensations, introducing a tiny bit of movement to the body, maybe by stretching our neck, maybe by moving our fingers, maybe by reactivating our facial muscles. Eventually, also bringing our awareness to the physical space around us, and slowly and gently concluding this practice. Thank you. So we'll do another practice in a minute, and yet we're taking this extra tiny 1-minute break just to move, to stretch, to drink some water if that's what we need, to make sure we're truly physically comfortable. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to mention the general logic of the progression of practices for today. So our final goal, as described in the description of the retreat, as mentioned in the description of the retreat, is loving kindness. That's what we're moving towards. But both the Tibetan tradition and I think other lineages sometimes introduce us to, let's say, preliminary steps that can support our practice of loving kindness and make it more stable and also more profoundly felt in our entire being. So we're first playing with these preliminary steps, and then we're going to do loving kindness proper. And some of these preliminary steps just have to do with this profound sense of ease, with preliminary relaxation, we could say. Quite a lot of masters in the Indo-Tibetan tradition taught these preliminaries associated with relaxation, release, stability, ease as something that should precede any meditation. But there's also a particular connection between practices of kindness and this deeper ease in which we can see and feel our indwelling warmth at all times. So there's also that direct connection between kindness practices and practices of profound relaxation. And I also think these practices of profound relaxation are just a wonderful way to express our kindness for ourselves and indirectly also for others, because obviously the more well-rested we are, the more likely we are to be resourced, to be patient, to be kind, to be compassionate, to be of service. If we're really sort of at the end of our rope in terms of our physical resources, mental resources, which is going to not have as much to offer. Or even if we're offering, it's from a space of lack. And so there's real beauty in seeing these practices of relaxation, and we're about to do another one, as an act of kindness towards ourselves and indirectly, I guess, the world in general. And so this practice that we did just now was mostly about just releasing tension from the body and resting in this state of inactivity while being aware of that inactivity. Sometimes this instruction that's voiced by some Tibetan masters: be still and be aware of the stillness, be silent and be aware of the silence. So there's that. And yet the Tibetan tradition also has a lot to offer in terms of other ways of moving in the direction of peace and ease. And because the Tibetan lineage has so many practices that skillfully engage our imagination, or as Tibetans would call it, the luminosity of our mind, some practices help us arrive at the same goal by doing instead of not doing. And this might be a little bit unfamiliar to those who primarily practice in other lineages or primarily practice secular mindfulness. But I just wanted to introduce this practice to make sure that folks know that such things do exist. And this particular formulation comes from the great Buddhist translator by the name of Tulku Thondup Rinpoche, who was a wonderful historian, a wonderful translator, and a wonderful teacher, passed away a couple of years ago, who really very generously shared his knowledge in many different ways by writing books on Buddhist history, translating many wonderful Vajrayana texts, but also introducing some of these foundational practices of meditation in a very skillful manner. And this particular practice he taught as a preliminary to loving kindness meditations, so we're right on topic. The difference here, the difference between this practice and the preceding one, is that here we don't simply let go and remain in awareness of what's left. Here we actively imagine certain feelings to invoke them or to bring them into the body and to bring them into our mind. So we are creating the experience of peace and relaxation instead of merely letting go and abiding in it. And both approaches can be very helpful. I've noticed in working with groups that some people resonate with one more than the other. But by playing with both, wonderful things can happen. So let's play with it and see if it resonates with us, if it works with us, for us. So again, stretching if we need to, and finding a comfortable stationary position. And so, to begin the actual practice, we bring our awareness to the body. And we notice in particular the ground that is holding us and the associated sensations. If we wish, we can take 3 deeper in-breaths and out-breaths. Eventually, allowing our body to breathe naturally once again. Without any control from the side of our mind. And then we bring to mind our highest aspirations once again, just to establish them as the basis for this meditation. For example, by thinking, may this practice contribute to, and then mentally expressing those aspirations, whatever they might be for us. Strengthening that in our mind. And then, for the main part of this practice, we will be using our imagination in skillful ways, combining imagery, words, feelings, and a sense of trust. Trusting that our work with our mind will eventually bring results and strengthen these positive qualities. And the main quality that we're working with in this practice is the quality of peace, or we could say peace and calmness, tranquility. So, Tulku Thondup suggests, imagine and feel that you are bringing the energy of peace and tranquility into your head. Maybe you're breathing it in and directing it there. Or maybe you're just awakening it with each new inhalation and exhalation. Imagining and feeling that every cell in our head and every particle of our head is filled with this quality of peace and tranquility, peace and calmness. Then, the same for our upper body. Bringing in the experience, the quality of peace and tranquility into every cell and every particle. At least from the point of view of what would it be like to experience peace and tranquility there in every particle of my upper body. Then the same for our hands and arms. Imagining that we're bringing the experience of peace and tranquility into our arms and hands. And then the same for our lower body. Remembering the key words, peace and tranquility. Throughout our lower body, throughout our legs, and even our feet. Then, imagining that the same qualities are present all around us, in the space around us, for example, in the room that we're in. Right there, in the air all around us, the same qualities of peace and tranquility. And also in every physical object and in every sentient being in that space as well. Temporarily seeing all the objects and all the beings as if they were expressions of this foundational energy of tranquility and peace. Imagining and feeling the same with regards to the larger region in which we're in, for example, our city, our town, our valley, if we're in a valley. And finally, imagining that all the sounds that we're hearing express the same foundational qualities. No matter what they are or what they appear to be, they all can remind us of the foundational energy of tranquility and peace. So, for a little while, just imagining that there are waves of peace moving around, and that's all there is. And then letting go of all the images, all the thoughts, no longer actively pouring energy into creating a particular feeling, but just resting in the afterglow of all that, in the aftertaste. Then, mentally dedicating the energy of this practice, again, to our highest aspirations. Coming back to the body. And introducing a tiny bit of movement to the body by rocking back and forth, stretching our neck, reactivating our fingers, maybe opening our eyes. Eventually coming back to the space around us and slowly concluding the practice. Kind of makes me wish I had a big bowl to make the end of meditation sound. Uh, but that actually doesn't always work on Zoom very well because sometimes it thinks it's noise and filters it out. So maybe that's for the better. But imagine that there's a big bowl and we just rang it to signify the fact that we're moving on into a slightly different type of activity for these last 10 minutes. And that is little exercise, well, I guess not an exercise, that's also a stressful word sometimes, just a activity, a fun activity in which if you're there in person, you can choose to speak to another participant, just turning literally to the person closest to you. And if you're online, or if you have strong social anxiety, which is also totally a thing, you could just do this as a journaling exercise as well. So don't feel pressured, but if you're okay sharing a little bit and listening to the other person, that's something that can be done. And the question for this kind of 8-minute exchange, where each person would, I guess, have 4 minutes, is very simple. How do I find deep rest in my life? Great idea with people on Zoom here asking if they can have breakout rooms. If someone is up for breakout rooms, then Jasmine absolutely can create them for you. If someone wants to opt out, also totally fine. Just message Jasmine or just say in the chat, no, I'll journal, whatever works for you. But the question is very simple once again. How do I find deep rest in my life? And it kind of twofold. How do you already find deep rest, I guess, and how would you like to find deep rest? And it's, again, no wrong answers. Just, I guess, 4 minutes per person if you want to share. And then after that, we'll take our 20-minute break and continue at 11:20. So please enjoy this little exchange. Find a partner temporarily to talk about this, and then enjoy your break. And then after that, we'll continue practicing at 11:20. So thank you so much. And yes, please enjoy. Jasmine will help you out if you have any doubts or questions.